Hi, everybody. Welcome again. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's session on basic needs. We are excited to have you here for tonight's panel. My name is Ogo, and I'm a student at Lehman College, and I'm also a member of the Young Invincibles. And I will be co-leading tonight's discussion on the student hunger crisis. You will hear on how New York students are taking action to support themselves and their communities. Now I will introduce you to our advocates. I'll start. My name is Ogo again, and I'm a Lehman student. I am a junior, and I'm a double major in anthropology and political science. Ciola?
Hi, my name is Ciola Harris. I go to SUNY Potsdam. I am a bio major, and this is my last year. I am a senior and hoping to get into grad school for physician assistant.
Hi, my name is Steven Jackson. I'm from CUNY Queens College, and my major is business administration and finance.
Hey, I'm Sylviana. I go to Hostos. I'm a freshman in my second term, and I major in animation. Briancy, I pass it on to you.
So Briancy will be joining us a little later, so we can get going.
So, thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. Now let's go over what tonight will look like. Ciola will start us off with an icebreaker. I will then go over an overview of what tonight entails, and the role. So what tonight entails. So how food insecurity and affects our communities, and role it plays again in our community. Following that, Stefan will lead the panel session with guest speakers who will tackle the overarching topic of food insecurity on college campuses. You will have the chance to actually ask them questions at the end of the panel session during our Q&A portion. Later in the evening, we will have a presentation by Briancy, who will be going over her research, the research she conducted with students at SUNY and CUNY. Finally, we'll end the evening tonight with a call to action and a call to action from you and from our community leaders. Now I'll have the pleasure to pass it to Ciola, who will be going over our icebreaker.
Thanks, Ogo. So we're going to get started with our icebreakers. We're going to use Slido to do this. If you never used Slido before, please go to your phone and open up this website and type in the code on the screen, which is 399798. I can repeat it again, 399798. You can use the QR code on the screen too. So our question tonight is, if you could only eat one item of food for the rest of your life, what would you eat? Okay, so I see pasta, sushi, mac and cheese. Waiting for some more. Ooh, lasagna, sushi and pasta, ice cream, pasta, sushi, bagels. I'm eating sushi right now. was eating sushi earlier. Bagels. It's a lot. Oh, I see nachos with beans, cheese, and sour cream. Mac and cheese, more sushi, Chinese food. We have vegan, mac and cheese, popcorn, plantains, platanos, I see. Pizza, rice with vegetables stew. I think that's Ethiopian food. Okay. It's a lot of food. Food truck, food from a truck. Um, yeah, this is making me hungry too. Uh, I think that's about it. Did everyone else answer? Oh, I see filet. I always wanted to try that. Salad. That's good. Cool. Okay, thank you for participating in the icebreaker, everyone. So now I'm going to go pass it back over to Ogo to give us an overview of the issue for today.
Thank you, Ciola,
You're
for
welcome.
for the fun icebreaker. I'm hungry now. I feel like damn. I'm feeling for some sushi. So let's go over our overview. So it's generally I'll go over the issues students face. One of the biggest issues students face when trying to achieve their degree is meeting the essential needs, such as food, housing, and transportation. Students have shown that having access to food and other needs increases their chances of them graduating from college. Even before the pandemic, students were struggling with hunger. A 2018 study at CUNY from the Hope Center found that nearly half, 48% of respondents had experienced food insecurity in the previous 30 days. We know that these numbers are likely significantly higher during this pandemic. While there are resources available like SNAP, it is often hard for students to qualify for such programs given the work requirement. However, federal, state, and government have recently temporarily eased those restrictions to support the economic recovery from the pandemic. As a result, 75,000 more New York college students are now eligible for SNAP. CUNY has taken steps to combat hunger with food pantries, voucher programs, yet students are still hungry. What more can be done to support students across New York colleges um, and to ensure that there's no more hunger, or like we actually defeat hunger in our communities? Today, you will hear from CUNY leaders and food advocates, as well as from students about their own experiences in accessing food. I hope you will leave this forum with a better sense of student hunger and actions we can take to tackle this issue on our own campuses. Now, I would like to pass it back to Ciola, who will introduce our panelists.
Ciola, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Ogo. I'm really excited to introduce our group of panelists today. First, I'd like to start off with Gabrielle Blavatsky, who is the co-founder and policy director of Equity Advocate. She has worked as a food policy analyst for various government agencies. Today, she'll be speaking about both her experience and her insight on food insecurities through her knowledge of food policy. Then we have Anna Compton, is a student ambassador for Young Invincible Basic Needs Group, and she is a senior at Hunter College. At Hunter College, she has worked with our students to organize food pantries on Hunter's main campus, and she will speak on that experience, among other things, on today's panel. Then we have Sunday F. Coward, is the University of Dean of Student Programs. Dean Coward managed students programs across CUNY and has spent over 30 years working in higher education. Today, she will provide updates on efforts CUNY is making to increase access to the food for its students. Then we have Senator Kaplan. It is the New York State Senator representing the 7th State Senate District. She is sponsoring the Senate bill of S1151A, which creates the Hunger Free Campus Act. Today, she will discuss this act and how it would address student hunger, and she will be joining later today in this panel. Then we have Sylviana is an advocate in the Young Advocate Program and is a freshman at Hostess Community College, majoring in animation. And today she will be speaking about the experience of dealing with food insecurities on campus. Then we have Jessica Rosario is a CUNY student, food navigator that attends John Jay College. She has spent her college career in being an advocate and student leader in CUNY University Student Senate and several other organizations. Currently, she is working with Swipe Out Hunger to spread awareness about SNAP on her campus and will speak to that work as a food advocate. Thank you all for participating, and you have 2 to 3 minutes to answer the questions directed at you, and then a minute to answer the general question posted to the group. For those who have joined us today, please use the Q&A to ask any questions. If we have any time towards the end, we will pick out a few questions from the audience. So first, we would like to hear from the CUNY students, and we will start with Sylviana. Sylviana, how could the school have better supported your needs and that of other students?
Oh, sorry. Um, well, I feel like more food pantries could have been provided with different options on food. It would have been helpful. Like for example, students would be provided like maybe a list of meals they would like, and at the same time give them the freedom to choose what would be put in those meals. Um, because people often have allergies or on a diet and religious beliefs. Um, I also feel like a website, like a link, should be put into like the school's website, even a food guide that will provide additional food resources like meal delivery, for example, for those who are homebound or have to take care of like younger children in the household. Um, I also feel like more partnerships should be included with nearby restaurants. My college, they did something like this in the very beginning of COVID, but felt like they should have done it for a longer time. Um, and at my college, for example, it was just also a hassle trying to resource access these resources on campus. So which is why I had to resort to accessing outside resources. Um,
Sylviana, can you share a little bit more about your experience accessing like food on your campus?
so when it came to accessing food on my campus, that's kind of when I reached out. They didn't have a food voucher, and I wasn't really made aware of it, even if they did have one. Um, I was referred to like programs like SNAP and referred to like the information of like the restaurant they were partnering with. And th- like they would send me constant emails, but there was like a lack of communication. So I would like ask a question and get no response. And it's like that for the campus in general. I reached out for other resources and I was told to reach out to multiple emails and I only got responses for only a few of them. Um,
Thank you, Somiana, for sharing your experience. It's really valuable, and I'm gonna hand it over to Ciola.
no problem.
So our next question goes to Anna. You worked with other students to establish a food pantry at Hunter College. Why did you feel compelled to establish one? What was your overall experience?
Hi, thank you so much for having me and for the question, Ciola. So when I had first transferred to Hunter, I was really lucky to work with NIPERG, which is the New York Public Interest Research Group. And through this internship, I was able to work as a project leader for their hunger and homelessness campaign. And one of the main reasons I wanted to get more involved with other students in this initiative was because during the month of October, NIPERG chapters at CUNYs do something called Trick or Eat. And they go into communities that are willing to donate non-perishable items and other resources for food pantries at CUNY. And I just thought this was really awesome, and that it was great that City College and BMCC was able to, expand on the resources that they were able to provide for their students that month through community support. And so it was, obviously as a Hunter student, I wanted more for, I wanted my campus to have a food pantry too. And then through research and connecting with other students, I was able to learn that there was a food pantry at Hunter, but it was on Brookdale's campus. And a majority of Hunter students don't ever go to Brookdale's campus. They're at the main campus most of the time. And the Brookdale campus too is very out of the way. You have to take like a train and a bus just to get there from our main campus. And so it was really important that, the students that can't get down there were getting the same resources and were accessing the food pantry. And so I learned quickly that there were a lot of students that were also pushing for this and really wanted this food pantry on the main campus. And another major role in that was the location of Hunter, because it is in the Upper East Side. And, it's really hard to get food in between classes. And I mean, I myself, I was skipping meals during, in between my classes, like during lunch, and that affects your classes and how you perform. And so, just considering the fact that it is a public school and a lot of us can't afford these outside meals, even with the few discounts that there were around Hunter, it just wasn't accessible enough. And we knew that it would be more accessible for students if it was, if there was this additional support on the main campus. And then once we, a lot of different students and a lot of different groups were working towards this. And we quickly learned, just even in classes of mine, students would talk about how it would take, weeks to get into the food pantry, or they couldn't get there because the only day that it was offered was on a Saturday. And a lot of them were, parents or working full-time jobs, or couldn't wait in line for it. And it was also like uncomfortable for a lot of people to kind of like be in the hallway at Brookdale. And so there were a lot of factors in wanting to expand this resource and make it better. And another major issue that we were hearing from students and just like general concerns was they would do a lot of outreach and send out emails and then never hear back. And that's obviously concerning because, if they're trying to access this resource, it's urgent. And students that did get into the food pantry, a lot of times there were like weeks between their appointments. And that's just not really how poverty works. And so it was concerning that, there couldn't be, closer dates for people to access food because, it just doesn't work out that way. But yeah, so I felt compelled mostly to get involved in working with other students to make these efforts happen at Hunter's main campus because of just all of the statistics that we all already know in terms of food insecurity. And, prior to the pandemic, it was almost 50% of CUNY students experiencing that food insecurity. And we were really lucky that we had, not just Hunter students that were on board for this, but CUNY students across all campuses just really, supported us and wanted to make it work. And just, there was just the desire to like expand on something that wasn't really working. And yeah, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. We have another question for you. What were some of the challenges you faced when you were working to create a food pantry at Hunter?
Awesome. Thanks so much again. So yeah, so there were quite a few challenges as, most students face when trying to organize something. There's obviously restrictions on a lot of stuff, but I would say one of the biggest challenges that myself and others faced, and again, I can only speak for myself, was just a lack of communication. It was really hard to kind of get, like these face-to-face interactions with administrators and people in charge. And, like all that students really wanted to do was have those face-to-face conversations and kind of just like work together and meet halfway. And it kind of felt like a lot of times, no matter what was said, like the point wasn't getting across. And I've noticed in this initiative that we worked on, as well as like other work that I've done with CUNY, is that I worry that sometimes like what's being done is only highlighted. And yes, it's really important to highlight and talk about those good resources and what is working. But, a lot of times when we don't address what isn't working or what could be done, it doesn't really like bring any progress in terms of meeting these students' needs. And so I think communication was difficult for sure. And, like I understand that it's not an easy subject to talk about. The percentages at CUNY schools are really scary and really real, but it gets us nowhere if we can't have those conversations, especially because a lot of these students, are facing these stigmas and aren't in places where they are comfortable enough to like bring their face to the situation. And it's just really important to, like work together and just ensure that students can get the resources that they really need. And another challenge specifically at Hunter was we were told there wasn't space. And, obviously as a student, I was viewing this as just kind of like a, just find the space type of situation. And obviously, I don't understand the logistics and administrative positions, but it just felt like, if half of your students are struggling, like you just have to find the solutions to help them. And I think that in terms of that, there could definitely be more staff specifically working with students like allocated to ending this crisis at Hunter and across other CUNYs. And that goes hand in hand with like more surveys and more outreach. I think it would be really efficient and helpful to like do a survey prior to each semester just to kind of get like a grasp on where students are at. And like committees with students and administrators would, I think that would be a game changer, because it could be these face-to-face conversations where students are able to address the issues that they're facing. Because I think a lot of times it's easy to just kind of like say no to something or not expand on something because we don't know the extent of it unless, it's being experienced by us firsthand. And then, yeah, so I mean, a lot of challenges were mostly, communication and just like trying to find a middle ground. But I know that with that too, a lot of that is, a funding issue at CUNY. And that was communicated to us that there was a funding issue. And, even through the executive order in New York State for SUNY and CUNY schools to have food pantries, it was great. And, really good on elected officials to push that. But when schools aren't being given the funding following those bills, it kind of just leaves public schools kind of just, empty-handed. And if they already don't have funding and they already are having issues meeting budgets, a bill can only do so much. And so from like a New York State budget issue, I think that the state really does need to prioritize CUNY and SUNY more, and not just CUNY and SUNY, public schools across all of New York. And yeah, and even, you know, food pantries that did exist across CUNYs, a lot of students were saying that they weren't getting adequate or sufficient and nutritional food. And so this issue really does go beyond students just getting food, and it's more about like them simply surviving. So yeah, so I would say like overall, I'm sorry if I rambled, a lot of challenges that like specifically at Hunter was based upon, you know, just communication. And I think there's a lot of things that could be done in terms of connecting with students. I think that people, you know, like staff and students like could really work together and, you know, have these conversations and do research and surveys together. And, you know, like it would make a difference for that allyship and just to like let students know that there are staff at their campuses that are in their corner.
Thank you, Anna. That was really insightful. I learned a lot just now. Again, we really want to say we appreciate everything you're doing in terms of the advocacy work and just putting the CUNY students' needs at first. So our next question will be for Jessica. Jessica, you are a part of the Swipe Out Hunger Navigator program. What is the program doing to address food insecurities on college campus?
Thank you so much for having me. And also thank you, Anna, for sharing like your experience. And you actually know about our program because you were a part of it for a little while. So the CUNY Food Navigator program from Swipe Out Hunger provides help to every CUNY student, or it's open to all CUNY students to access food. So the ways that we do that are we have a team of navigators, and it's a peer-to-peer program. So they are CUNY students, you know, supporting CUNY students. So we have a team of 5, including myself, led by our team manager, who's a CUNY grad, a 2-time CUNY grad, like many of us are in the system. And what we do is we have received extensive training on SNAP, so we're able to help make referrals to students to SNAP and actually help them through the process. Because sometimes maybe a student who's facing food insecurity goes to their college and, you know, lets them know, you know, I just don't have enough, or I'm not able to, you know, feed myself. So you're referred to SNAP, but you can't really receive more extensive help than that. So what we do is we're here to answer all your questions. We have calls with students to go through the application, go through the document application, because it's a very extensive application that's kind of confusing. You know, if you're someone who is a student while also, you know, taking care of family, if you have multiple jobs, you know, there are complexities that come with just being a CUNY student, and many of us aren't just CUNY students. So through that, we're able to support students, also making referrals to community resources in your neighborhood based on where you live. And we also make connections to other community organizations in New York City. And also sometimes we receive students from out of state, and we're still able to connect them to resources in their neighborhoods through our research. But we're open to all CUNY students who need help finding food access. And, you know, no one knows a CUNY student better than a CUNY student. No one knows the experience of a CUNY student more than a CUNY student. And also, including myself, I've applied for SNAP. I've benefited from the program. So we're able to use our experiences to help students, to show them that they're not alone, and that, you know, no one should be starving and hungry while trying to achieve their degree. You know, many of us, including myself, working to support our families and stuff. So the last thing we need is to not access basic needs, and we're able to fill that gap and provide some form of support for students who are facing that insecurity. And again, open to all campuses throughout CUNY.
Thank you, Jessica. I relate so much, and I totally agree. And we just want to say thank you for being an advocate. So we do have another question for you. Jessica, what are some of the common challenges that students face when they're trying to access food on campus?
I think the first roadblock sometimes can be just even asking for help, and the stigma that can come from not wanting to seem like you need something from people or you don't know where to go. I'm a John Jay student, so the first thing I would go to is probably a wellness center that we have, and trying to reach out to a center or a place at your school that usually many students are trying to reach out to. So usually get like a list of places you can go to, but being able to have the time and the energy to dedicate to actually doing the outreach on top of also having to complete all the forms and usually figuring it out by yourself. That's what we see a lot when we have students that we speak to. Sometimes they've applied for SNAP already, or they don't know if they qualify, and something usually goes wrong. There's a misstep, there's a miscommunication with understanding the requirements for these types of programs. So being able to talk to a student like myself or someone on our team, we're able to just break it down slower, let them know that they're not alone, and that sometimes these things are complicated, but they're not impossible. And when we don't know the answer, you know, we reach out to our connections. We reach out to other organizations who are also doing this work. So it's not an impossible road, but also sometimes when, you know, you're a student, you're already struggling maybe in your classes, or there are other complexities that you're dealing with. Often mental health can get in the way of being able to ask for help. So it's a multi-layered process to someone being food insecure, someone being basic needs insecure. But I think that a way that we can stop that is by resource sharing, having conversations like this one, having advocates on the call like we have now, and being able to hear from the experiences of other students on this panel, and being able to share our experiences to other stakeholders on this panel, and being able to say, you know, we really need help, and we're the ones also providing the help. So we need it, and we're also giving it at the same time.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And now I'm going to hand it over to Stephen for our next question. Stephen, over to you.
Hi, everyone. And now we'll hear from food advocates and CUNY leadership on how they are working to increase food access to students. Just a reminder, each of you will have 3 minutes to respond to each question. So our first question is for Gabrielle. So Gabrielle, the state budget has passed. How is the state supporting students' basic needs?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So the state budget is looks like it's going to be able to support students in a few different ways. And it's mostly through just like basic financial support for students. There's not a lot that I'm seeing in the budget that is directly combating student hunger, but basically there's some support that can help take some of the financial burden off of students. So the first thing that we see in the completed state budget is that there's a 3-year tuition freeze that's been put on for CUNY and SUNY students that will hopefully really help over the coming years students so that they're not experiencing increased tuition. There's also a $500 increase to the maximum award for the tuition assistance program, which is, not an enormous amount of money, but it's still a little bit, although it does still leave a gap between, that tuition assistance program and the tuition at schools. So there is still more, advocacy that can be done there, it seems, to kind of increase the funding for that program and the maximum award available through the tuition assistance programs. I did also see when I was reviewing the budget that there has been restored funding for CUNY's Accelerated Study and Associates program, the ASAP program, that provides students with free tuition, Metro cards, textbook funding. So a lot of just like basic needs financial support that will additionally hopefully help relieve some financial burden for students. Similarly, there's funding in the state budget, the opportunity programs, and there's a lot of different opportunity programs that are getting funding in the budget this year that have really been restored this year, I should say, that are providing financial aid and for students to cover like non-tuition related costs, which I know is really helpful for students month to month. And then Also, I saw that the state funding has subsidies that are going to go towards restoring childcare on campuses at CUNY and SUNY. I know that a lot of students are also parents. I'm a parent as well. I know how expensive childcare can be. So that, I'm sure, will be super helpful for a lot of students to cover some of those costs that come up every month. So those are like the basic ones that are really student focused that I saw. Yeah, I'm excited to see that really, because there was so much federal funding that came down from the new administration, that a lot of these programs were able to be restored, and that they're not seeing the drastic budget cuts to a lot of these programs that many people were anticipating had the administration not changed over.
Thank you for providing us with the insight into the state budget.
Yeah.
Our next question is, so Gabrielle, similarly, the city budget is underway. Yeah. What is included, if anything, to support increased access to food for CUNY students?
Sure. So the state budget is complete. That process has wrapped up. But like you said, the city budget, is still very much in play. It's still in process. And fortunately for everyone here on the phone, there's still an opportunity to influence the city budget. So if there's something that you wanted to see funded, or if there's something that's a priority for you guys, I highly encourage you to reach out to your city council member, to Speaker Johnson, who has a lot of influence over the budget, and talk to him about your priorities. But what so far has come out in the draft budget, what we call the council response, the city council response to the mayor's proposed budget, is a couple things. So first, is a $20 million for small CBOs, nonprofits that run food pantries, as well as part of that $20 million is also going to go towards CUNY pantries on campuses and restoring funding for that. So I'm not sure how much of that 20 million is going to be set aside yet for CUNY food pantries, but I do know that there will be some support there from City Council to continue those programs. So that was very exciting to see. The other thing I think that's relevant for this group is that it looks like City Council is pushing to put $80 million into the Get Food program, which is a program that started during COVID that provides meal deliveries for people who are homebound or unable to get to the grocery store for whatever reason. It provides grab and go meals, no questions asked from schools across the city, both for students, for parents, or for any adults really that need help with food security right now. Which has been a really great program for a lot of people. So that hopefully will provide some students with some food support that they need in the coming year. Yeah, thank you for posting that about the Get Food program. Those are the two, I think, most relevant things that I saw in the budget, but I'm sure that there's other things here that the Young Invincibles may know about as well.
Thank you for sharing that information. It's good to know. Yeah. So our next panelist member that we'll be hearing from is Dean Coward. And so Dean Coward, what measures has CUNY taken to increase food access for students during the pandemic? And how does it plan to sustain those efforts as campuses begin to reopen?
Sure. Thank you first for having me here. And I did want to say that I've listened and heard students and saying how they are basically having to retell their story or not getting responses back. And that is something that we will definitely work to correct because no one should have to really get thrown off with trying to get food or services to help them as a student. And so we like to, as DC Maybank says, who's within Student Affairs and Enrollment Management, we refer to it as essential services because more than basic, these are things that we need for our students to have so that they can survive. Healthy students have healthy outcomes. And so what we've been doing is working single stop. We no longer, we terminated their contract and our relationship last year. And so those schools who had them were the community colleges and also John Jay out of their wellness center. We are fortunate enough that it was put in the budget this year where we will be expanding those services to not only include the community colleges and John Jay, but also senior colleges and some of the professional schools. And we are excited. So that's 10 more areas where we'll be bringing in resource centers. And those current resource centers handle mental health, food, they determine SNAP eligibility. They also provide emergency funds that students can come in and ask for, help with bills, help with medical bills, help with rent, and it's really going into those existing ones. Now, what the new ones will offer, we'd like them to mirror it, but those are things we're working on now because the funding has just come in, and we'll be meeting actually within the next week with all 18 schools to discuss what roles and what things they'll be providing. And so also with legal services, that's part of it. And it's sort of single stop like services that we'll continue providing for our students. One, I do want to mention some of the partnerships because I know it was said that they wish there were more partnerships, and we agree. And so currently the resource centers have partnerships with grocery stores, with Food Bazaar, Whole Foods, Stop and Shop, Food Emporium. And these partnerships allow the programs to purchase items for their pantries as well as grocery store cards for students to be redeemed at those supermarkets and grocery stores. And so the value of those cards go between $50 and $100 per card, and all students are eligible to receive a grocery card. So in addition to the grocery stores, the resource centers also have partnerships with the Food Bank of New York City, Department of Sanitation, Feed the Frontlines, and also with the New York Yankees. And these partnerships provide additional food items for the food pantries. So in terms of access to the pantries, the majority of the food pantries allow students to visit the pantry weekly. However, students who are in need and need food more than that within a 7-week time frame will not be turned away from those pantries. And the food pantries, of course, for those who have used them or seen them or referred people to them, they have non-perishable food items. They also have offer vegetarian, gluten-free, and low-sodium foods for students. And 4 of the campuses have freezers, and so they are able to provide frozen meats as well as frozen vegetables for students. And so because our food pantries are the primary mechanism for SNAP screening and enrollment, especially those pantries that work with the food bank, we really like to bring in students. We coordinate with our CUNY Edge colleagues to make sure that the more students who know about the screening, the food navigators have been wonderful with destigmatizing the need and telling students where the services are, and that really helps us. And so that's some of the things that we've been doing through the pandemic at this time, and we're looking to expand those services with the additional funding. But most important, we're looking to have a task force where we will bring students onto that task force, because we can't do any of this work without the student voices involved in it. And so that will be forthcoming through the summer and into the fall. We're hoping that it will start up at that point and it will be charged to do that work.
Thank you for sharing how the CUNY is planning to change the food pantries. We have another question for you.
Sure.
So CUNY and other colleges have recently received significant funding from the federal government. How is CUNY planning to use these additional funds to support increased access to food and other essential needs?
And so as I talked about, we're bringing 10 more colleges into the fold. Right now, it was only based really at the community colleges and at John Jay. And so onboarding the other 10 schools that do have some form of food pantries in existence. They're run by students and or faculty. And so we have administrative support for the ones at the community colleges and at John Jay. But the other ones have different hours. And so every pantry has different hours. And now with the pandemic, those hours have been cut down. The foot traffic has not been the same. And so we're looking to onboard students to serve as those navigators to help out in the centers, to direct students, and really similarly to the food navigators that Jessica just spoke about earlier, we want to have more student involvement, because peer-to-peer information brings students into the centers more than an administrator saying, go to this center. But we want students to have maps so that they know when they're on a campus, they'll see resource center in every one of the centers that we're opening and the existing ones. And so some already have resource centers in their name, but we want students to know whatever campus you step foot on, you can look for the resource center. And that's where you'll find the food pantries and all the services that will open up to help you with whether it's mental health, whether it's emergency funds, legal services, taxes, and of course, food.
Thank you, thank you. I learned a lot, and I like
You're welcome.
I like the information that you're sharing with us today.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be moving on to Senator Kaplan, and so thank you, Senator Kaplan, for joining us today. We know that you recently introduced the Hunger-Free Campus Act. Can you tell us more about this bill, why you introduced it, and what you hope it accomplishes?
Thank you for inviting me, Jacob. I'm sorry, Stephen. And I'm very happy to be part of this panel and to address some of your questions. I introduced the Hunger-Free Campus Act after receiving an email from an impacted constituent. Her email moved me to see what other states were doing, and I saw that other states had started to create policies seeking to address student hunger on campuses. As a mother of recent college graduate, and with one still in college, I cannot imagine the stress on a student and their family when having to make a decision on whether to buy textbooks or food. I felt strongly this was an issue that legislature needed to address. I'm proud to sponsor the Hunger-Free Campus Act in the Senate, and I'm proud to be partnering with Assemblywoman Linda Rosenthal on this bill. This legislation appropriates $10 million to be awarded as grants on competitive basis to public and private institutions of higher education, which are designated as hunger-free campuses. This funding will be used to address student hunger, leverage sustainable solutions to address basic food needs on campus, raise awareness of services currently offered to address basic food needs, as well as to build partnerships at the local, state, and national level to address food insecurity among students. In order to be designated as a hunger-free campus, an institution shall establish a hunger-free task force that meets at least 3 times in an academic year. These task forces will also create action plan with goals to be implemented by the campus. A campus would also need to designate a staff member responsible with assisting students with SNAP, provided options for students to utilize SNAP at a campus stores, participate in an Awareness Day campaign activity, an event during National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. Campuses would also have to provide at least 1 physical food pantry on campus or enable students to receive food through an alternative stigma-free arrangement. Campuses will also have to annually conduct a student survey on hunger. And more importantly, a campus would also need to develop a program for free meal vouchers, such as the Swipe Out Hunger campaign, where students can donate unused meals to assist their classmates in addressing the unmet hunger needs. That's basically in a nutshell what this bill does. And I'm hoping that, obviously we've passed the budget season this year, but I'm hoping that we can get that $10 million appropriation in the budget next year.
Thank you, thank you. So our next question for you is, what other efforts are you or your colleagues making to increase access to food, especially for young New Yorkers? What other policies or investments do you think are needed to ensure that all students don't go hungry?
So, as we all have seen, COVID has hit us in a very bad way. And I actually participated in a lot of those food distribution and food banks. This year, New York has undertaken numerous steps to try to address hunger. Specifically, this year's budget included 80 million in extra funding for SNAP, which raised SNAP to a record funding level of 500 million. We accomplished that in this year's budget. We also included $500,000 for hunger prevention and nutrition assistance program. Also of critical note, during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Nourish New York program was expanded to address the critical needs of families during this crisis, and to date has invested over 60 million to help those in need. This program provides funds to New York's food banks and emergency food providers who then purchase agricultural products from New York farmers and dairy manufacturers and deliver the food to families in need. And emergency food providers can use Nourish New York to fund and step up food drives through events and giveaways. Funds can also be used to distribute dairy vouchers that can be redeemed in grocery stores for products like cheese, yogurt, milk, sour cream, and butter throughout the state. And we as New Yorkers really pulled together to address hunger during the worst days of this pandemic. And I believe that this year's budget commitments show our continued dedication toward addressing hunger.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hello? Thank you.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator, for so much for providing us with the insight on the work you are to address the food insecurity on college campuses. And so now we'll take the questions from the audience. And so I noticed in the chat that from Rob Friedlander, he says, "Thank you, Senator Kaplan, for all your leadership. What can students on this call do to help pass the Hungry Free Campus Act in Albany?"
So I have to say, the young adults, the students, have the strongest voice. This is about you and your futures. And I already have had conversations with 2 different students from 2 different other campuses, and I've asked them to help spread the word. It's your voices that need to be heard. If you can really contact your friends in all the other colleges and unite together with one voice, ask your electeds to help you out and put a stop to this. You could also really establish your programs within different schools. And like I said, if you have a center where food can be donated and have a food bank where kids can actually go, students can go and get food without any stigma. We want to make sure that anyone who is food insecure is able to go ahead and get access without having to feel bad about this. I encourage everyone to reach out to your friends, band together, and call up your electeds. Make sure your voices are being heard throughout the state. The stronger that voice, the further you will get with this. I'm more than happy to champion this and to work very hard to bring this to fruition, but I also need help from all of you. And I truly believe there isn't a single thing that you guys can't do when you unite and you're with one voice asking for things from your electeds.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, I have another question for the students. I would ask, what other efforts like can students do to increase student access towards basic needs?
In terms of, are you asking me? Is this is this in terms of food insecurity?
You can answer first. Just like tell us like how are students, like how can students be part of this movement where you know, you have this legislation and all the moving parts, like how can students be part of it to like increase awareness?
So on the link, Melanie put out legislation on the link. Please go and read it and get more familiarized. You can all write letters of support. You can contact even your administration and talk to them about this. The more support, as I said, we have on this, the further we can get and the faster we can get to the point that we want to get. And I'm more than happy to, if anyone wants to call and have a conversation with me about this, I'm more than happy to do so. My door is always open. As I said, I've already spoken with a few different students, and I've encouraged them really to put groups together from all different colleges, private and public, to bring more awareness and to really find this cause as something that they believe in and that they would want to champion.
Thank you. Thank you. This question is for Jessica, Silviana, and Anna. What can CUNY or your specific school be doing in order to increase student access for quality food resources on campus? Access to quality food resources on campus.
So I'll go first. I mentioned that they should like, wait, I'm sorry, what was the question?
So like what can CUNY or like your specific school be doing in order to like increase student access to quality food resources on campus?
I feel like they should reach out to the students more. Instead of like while sending out emails, like actually like respond to them. I also feel like it should also be like kind of like in lesson with professors also, maybe like work together to like be aware of the situation and like together come up with like a solution, because it's like that way if a student wants to know something, like they could ask the professor and the professor could like guide them and give them as much as information as they would at the food pantry section.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I don't know if Jessica or Anna, you would like to add to that question?
Yeah, I can go next, if that's okay. And yeah, Silviana, that was great. Thank you for sharing. And I feel like just in terms of, getting students connected, and a lot of the issues that students are facing at CUNY is just, like as every other panelist has covered, they're just not getting emails back. And it's really defeating when you're, putting yourself out there and for months or however long you're trying to get these resources. I think it would make things a lot easier on students if there was just more general outreach on individual campuses. And, like, I know that, I'm someone who checks my email every single day, and I still don't know about a lot of the resources at Hunter, and I've been there for years. And so I think it is defeating just for students to, constantly have to do the research. And at a point, a lot of students just give up and just feel that there's no help out there. And so I think campuses could definitely initiate whether it's like, you know, like student-led boards or just more town halls where students can actually talk with people who are running these programs and have these deciding factors, and just like putting faces to these stories is also just really important. And I think especially during the pandemic, we learned a lot about what students are really going through at CUNY. And I think that, you know, each year we have specific paperwork, things we need to complete before going back on campus. And I think that there needs to be more consistent surveying and more research on what students are actually experiencing. Because I think that if, you know, like the schools themselves are updating those stats, we would definitely see that we need to do more outreach, and that, you know, staff on campus need to connect more students. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question is for Dean Coward. During the pandemic, students are able to access any CUNY food pantry. Can this be expanded even after students transition into in-person learning?
Hi, so it's my understanding that the chancellor had stated it wasn't just during the pandemic that was going to be going forward, that students can access it, because a student who may live in the Bronx but goes to Brooklyn would have to take that food across, you know, multiple boroughs. And so it's students can access any pantry at this point, and we do plan on continuing that. We'll also have more pantries. Right now, some are doing grab and go. Baruch just switched over and they're doing online ordering. So that just started within the last 2 weeks. They were doing grab and go meals. But as we continue to have more resources and also a lot of commitment, and also we need hands-on help. There are a lot of offices that are understaffed because of the pandemic, the finances to run these offices. And now we have the CUNY Corps, the recovery corps that's just starting, where we'll be able to hire students who can help out in the pantries over the summer and make $2,000. So anything that we have available, we're looking to put towards the resource center so that students can get timely responses, timely meals, timely access to the services.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We have another question for Gabrielle. So as a food policy analyst, how is higher education lacking in their approach to food insecurity support, and what solutions can you provide?
That's a really good question. You know, honestly, I work on policy with a big P. Like I work outside of schools. I work on government. So I feel like I'm actually not an expert on what schools can be doing internally to really help students. I feel like the students here are more of an expert on that. So yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if I have a good answer to that question. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. There's another question for one moment. It's coming.
I can take that. That question is also for Gabrielle. In the policy priorities listed on the Equity Advocates website, has need for, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like me to repeat the question? I'm sorry, my internet might be lagging.
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah, please continue.
Okay. So the question was, has the need for this work increased in the start of the pandemic, and how can the city and state support this organization?
Yeah, I mean, the increase in hunger has been insane since the start of COVID. We've seen hunger increase by 40% here in the city. The demand on that we've seen at food pantries and emergency food providers has been off the charts. There's, you know, people have been losing their jobs. People haven't been able to get into their kids into school, which has, you know, is typically like a huge supply of food. I'm really sorry about my dog. and for people that they rely upon. And, you know, that has created tremendous hunger problems. And there's so many things that the state and city can be doing that we're pushing for. You know, I think one of the things that the senator mentioned that we're really excited about is shout out to dogs. Yeah. One of the things that we're really excited about that the senator mentioned is the Nourish New York program on the state level, which is really connecting farmers and local food banks and pantries to provide healthier food into emergency food programs, because, you know, in the past, there's been really just pretty low quality food supplied through that programming. It's usually shelf stable stuff. It's not been as many fruits and vegetables that have been available. So that this program really changes the game and allowing like the highest quality things that you typically see at like farmers markets to be available in pantries. So that's incredibly exciting. You know, I think one of the big things that the city is potentially investing in that we saw in the city budget, which we were really excited about, is putting a lot more money into the Human Resource Administration, which they typically have not done in past years, but they're increasing their budget, I think, by $30 million. And what that will do is put more staff in that agency, which is in charge of doing outreach to all New Yorkers about what is available to them in terms of, you know, programming like food stamps, SNAP, WIC programs, how people can enroll in those programs, how they can get access to those benefits. I heard that students are being directed to those programs. So we really need for that city agency to be beefed up, to be able to take in the, you know, increased number of applications that they have, to be able to answer the phones in a timely way, to get people enrolled in those programs. And be able to really serve people that are in need right now. So I think that is going to be a hugely important investment. And the investments that we're anticipating in the food pantries, like I said, through that $20 million that the city has committed to, I think that will be incredibly important for a lot of people who are relying on those systems, just to be able to have more resources available to them. Yeah, I think that those are going to be really critical and key.
Thank you. So as we close off the panel, I would like to thank our panelists for joining us today. Now I'm going to hand it over to Beyonce to present her survey findings.
Thank you, Stephen. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy lives to join us for this important issue we like to discuss with you. My name is Briancy, and today I'll be presenting data results from a survey we conducted in order to get an idea of how food insecurity affects CUNY/SUNY students, and also provide some data that may support student testimonials on their experience navigating food insecurity. So the name of our survey was called How Full is Your Stomach? And we managed to get 115 respondents on our survey from over 10 CUNYs and 5 SUNY schools, allowing us to gather a relatively large data pool on food insecurity in New York. We asked 7 multiple choice questions and 3 optional short responses, and we made sure to keep the survey completely anonymous to give students some room to talk about their experience navigating food insecurity comfortably. So one of the first questions I would like to go over that we asked was, do you believe a student's access to food impacts their educational and academic experience? 94% of participants do believe that access to food does have an impact on educational experience and academic performance, suggesting that the majority of participants feel that there is a correlation between student performance and access to food. The next question we included was asking students if they think their school does a good job at informing students about food resources available on their campuses, and 45% of participants did not think that their school did a good job of informing students about available food campus resources, while 26% while 28% didn't know enough information about how well food resources are advertised on their campus. On to the next question, which asks whether at some point in their college career, did the student have to skip a meal? 47% responded that they did not have to skip meals at any point due to lack of resources, while 44% responded that they did have to skip a meal, and 7% were uncertain. 47% means that about 54 out of the 115 participants had not skipped meals because of inadequate resources, while about 50 out of the 115 had skipped because of inadequate resources. I added these two questions together because I wanted to highlight something. Almost 54% of participants are aware of a food pantry or food voucher program at their campus, while 46% in total are either unsure or do not know. One participant mentioned how most students on their campus don't know any programs their school offers. Then we asked how often participants had to skip meals, and 31% responded that they never had to skip a meal, but then we have this varying degree of participants skipping meals. Almost 8% skip meals on a daily basis, 20% skip twice or more times per week, and then collectively, 68% skip meals with some frequency. What's interesting is that over half of the participants are aware of food pantries and vouchers, but the percentage of those who skip meals is relatively high. But this could be for various reasons. Moving on to the next question, we wanted to know if there was anything participants felt was lacking on their school's part in terms of food resources and on campuses, or what they would like to see more of. And some of the responses were, I wish at freshman orientation and every week/month or semester, they would broadcast/email all the students to let them know what supports are available. Another one said there are no email communications or announcements about food resources, especially in the cafeteria. And one mentioned how most days their cafeteria would be closed at Hunter with no notice. We then wanted to collect some recommendation from the participants on ways to increase access to food resources for college students on their campus. And the common theme amongst the majority of the responses received was increasing awareness about food resources available on campus and improving existing food pantries to better serve students. Lack of awareness was also the common issue brought up in the previous question that asked what they felt their school lacked when it came to food resources. The last thing we wanted to collect from this survey were experiences. We were very interested in gathering some testimonials from participants to understand in their own words how food insecurity affected or affects their college experience. One wrote that there have been many semesters where they had to forsake food to afford tuition or simply did not have access to quality food. Another mentioned how access to healthier food options in their community have become limited. And then one participant wrote how they would usually skip meals whenever they ran out of groceries at the end of the week because they couldn't purchase more. So hopefully with these survey results, as well as some testimonials from both the panel and from the survey, we were able to shed some light on a very important issue that is affecting college students, which is food insecurity and inadequate communication and advertising about food resources. If you're interested in learning more about our mission and maybe want to spread the word or even join our cause, follow us on all these social media handles. And of course, reach out to Neha Seda at neha.seda@younginvincibles.com with any inquiries you may have. Thank you.
Briancy, we have a few.
So we have a question for the general public. Like, so after reviewing the survey, like what statistic stood out to you the most and why? Like, which response from the college experience question stood out to you?
I guess what stood out to me the most was how often students were skipping meals and how frequent. Like, I really wasn't expecting that at all. and that data stood out the most.
We have a few more questions. Stephen, you can take it away.
Q&A. This question is from Diana Martinez. Do you think that colleges should have food vendors on the site?
Totally. Food vendors should be on the site. And by site, do you mean on campuses, college campuses? Because if that's what you mean, then yeah, because usually the cost that they would sell food at is relatively less expensive than, let's say, stores around college campuses that do jack up the prices because there are students around, because there's this misconception that college students can afford higher priced things, which most of the time isn't the case.
Thank you.
We have one more question. What was the common finding that was affecting students toward food insecurity?
The common theme amongst the findings was lack of awareness, as well as at some points, lack of resources available. Either students knew about programs but didn't know how to access them, or they didn't know about the programs and had no idea who to ask, because especially during the pandemic, everything is online, and how to access these food pantries or these food resources, sometimes they change without notice. And so students are left in the dark about where to go, who's the point of contact, and that really affects like access and sometimes increase food insecurity.
So like, what steps do you think people should take in making sure that students are informed about available food resources on their campuses?
I think the best steps to take is just spread the word. If you know about a resource on campus, tell it to your friends, or go to any organizations on your school that deal with like student affairs, and just like tell them like, hey, there's this resources that not a lot of people know about. Would you mind sending mass emails to our fellow students? Or yeah, just talking about it on social media, stuff like that. Like the main step to fighting food insecurity is awareness, and just like letting people know these resources are available, reach out to them.
Awesome. So I know the internet can be crazy sometimes. So, moving on from Briance's section, now we're going to be closing out. So we're moving towards the call for action. So we have Ogo here who will take us, through the calls to action. So Ogo.
Thank you. Sorry, my computer is like having its own technical difficulties. But thank you. Thank you so much for your research, Brianti. I think it's very insightful and very important for us to like truly think about this information that we're listening to. So as we come to an end, I hope that everybody can leave this meeting having a better sense of food insecurity, in a willingness to take concrete actions to fight against food insecurity on college campuses. We must ask ourselves, what do these statistics look like during a pandemic? We need justice for all of our students. Help us get food justice now by signing onto our petition, demanding that New York higher education officials and New York leaders provide us with better food resources. We are asking for increased funding for food pantries and the food voucher programs. We are the expansion of health box and programs that raise awareness of resources and available on and off of campus. We have also created a food resource guide to assist students in finding resources in their communities and in their college campuses, specifically CUNY. The guide lists out food pantries on CUNY campuses along with information about how to access it. We also want you to, advocate for food insecurity on your own campuses. If you're interested in doing more of this advocacy, please take the campus pledge and we will send you more information. You will see the pledge in the chat. As we come to a close, to our first night of the Step Up New York series, we would like to get your feedback about the event. You'll see a link on the chat. Please take a few minutes to fill this out. This survey is important opportunity for young Invincibles to hear exactly how we have helped you, or how this information has helped you, and how we can continue to improve and get a better sense of how to help you and other community and other advocates. Thank you again for taking the opportunity, the time of your late night to come and hear us and participate in this very much important conversations.
Thank you, Ogo. So, hey everyone, I know there might be a lot of links. I'm sharing my screen so I won't be able to see it, but I know there are a lot of links. So please take this time. We have a few minutes before we hit the 6:30 mark. So please, all the calls to action, Ogo did an amazing job explaining them. So you have a few minutes to click all the links. I know sometimes tabs can be a lot, but just take a few seconds, fill out the petition, the pledge, and then also the post survey, because that will help us. We have a continued series. This is also a shameless plug. We have the series, so Step Up New York is continuing over the next 2 weeks. We'll hear from transfer students next week, and we'll hear from, just the issues of mental health the week after that. So stay tuned for that. And then, these post surveys will help us just kind of guide that. And with that, we can come to a close. So take your time, just fill that out. And after that, thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists for joining us tonight. It's evening still, but thank you for providing us with the amazing, valuable insight. And then also to all the people who've joined us today and providing us with the questions and just staying active. So thank you so much for joining us today.